So I really cannot stress enough how important it is for you as a parent to understand your position in this and how much you can do to help your child. Hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today on the meditation channel. I thought it was about time for me to start talking directly to camera. For those of you who don't know me, I make guided meditations and meditation music, so follow me on @meditation channel for free meditations and free guided meditations. Also, I always read the comments, so if you have any specific requests, please leave a comment below, and I am more than happy to create meditations if I feel that it's not important, because everything's important, but if it's something that I think that a lot of people would benefit from, I will make the meditation for you and for everybody else, of course. So today I thought about just opening my heart up and talking to all of you through this wonderful camera and basically talk about a topic that is, I believe, an incredibly important topic, but unfortunately a lot of people do not want to talk about it. The other issue about this topic is that due to YouTube's algorithm, I cannot say certain words because then the video won't reach as many people. So just be aware that I will only be using the word abuse, but that includes both, and so just be aware of that. Now, if you are a parent who is watching this, I really want to commend you for taking the time to do your research and to hear me out, because I truly believe that these tips can really help you, and it's so important that you do get help, that you educate yourself, and I will get into that in a minute, about the 7 steps. I believe I have 7 steps for you to take in order to help you and guide you through this incredibly traumatic experience, not just for your child if they are the one who's going through this, or family member, but also for yourselves, because this is something that unfortunately affects everyone. If you are a victim, if you feel the need to share this video to anybody who needs to be educated on the topic, maybe even your parents or maybe your partner or whoever, feel free to share it, because the more that they know, the more that they understand, the better it is, of course, for you to help you and to help you recover. If this is something that does not resonate with you, that's okay. It doesn't have to. It might not be for everybody, but I can only tell you that these are certain things that I have studied, I have learned, and I have also experienced myself. I firsthand understand what it means to go through this, and I also firsthand understand what it is that we need as support. I also educate myself a lot on this topic because, as you know, I create guided meditations. I'm in the healing department, and I also listen to victims. I'm also an actor on the side, and the specific method that I use, which is the Chabak method, by the way, my notes just fell. You use your own personal issues and your own personal story to express your character. Being in this industry, I am constantly amazed at the number of people and the stories that I hear time and time again of people who have been abused. So let's get into it. The first thing you need to understand is the severity of this issue and how it psychologically affects people. Not just psychologically, of course, but also emotionally. So when somebody goes through something like this, doesn't matter whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, it will literally f you up. Simply put, there are certain boundaries that get crossed, and especially when you're a child, you don't quite understand it. So what happens is when you're an adult, you kind of start processing what happened, and you start realizing really how bad it was. And sometimes it takes a long time for people to even understand it, and once they do understand it, then they have to deal with the consequences, or they realize why they were or behaved a certain way their entire life or as a child. The common issues that come with abuse are, I'm just going to use my notes here. I just want to make sure that I get all the facts right when it comes to research and what it shows how abuse affects somebody psychologically and emotionally, and what are the repercussions of it. So researchers has shown that time and time again that abuse causes stress, anxiety, PTSD, difficulty in trust, lower levels of work engagement, affects physical and mental health, insomnia, eating disorders, self-harm, substance abuse, and of course, suicide. These are facts. These are repercussions of abuse. This is what it can do to a person. Not to say that you can't fix this, and this is why we're here, but to say that there's something happens to you that changes your perception of relationships, of sex, and of course of love. So whether it is a family member that you've been abused by, or whether it is a stranger, that will definitely have an impact from that day on your relationships. And not only just with your relationships with other people, but of course your relationship with yourself, which is the most important person. A ton of shame and guilt comes with this experience, especially if you were in your child years, or if you were older and you just live in a community that is not very accepting of this topic, which luckily now society is catching on and is understanding the importance of mental health, and people are starting to speak up, like the Me Too movement. But let's just be real. The older generation were told to be quiet, to brush it under the carpet, and simply to get over it. Which, how did that turn out for you? I am today going to tell you what I truly believe is efficient and effective in recovering, in helping. But I just want to be real here. This is something that doesn't really go away, especially not overnight. So this is something that can come back up, something can trigger the person, the victim, and cause flashbacks of all sorts. Like in my case, for instance, I did not remember the abuse for quite some time because it happened to me in my childhood. So what ends up happening is that people have repressed memory. And this is actually a way of your brain trying to survive, trying to cope with the trauma that happened. Also, once again, because if you're a child and you've been through that, you don't understand what happened to you. You can't understand what happened to you. And I can ask any of you, a lot of people have the debate of, oh, repressed memory is just a bunch of bullshit. Well, if you think about your childhood, I am sure that there are things that suddenly you remember all of a sudden that happened. And what ends up happening is like Pandora's box. Once you have that one little flash memory, you start digging deep and you start looking deeper and deeper. And then all of a sudden, you really start realizing what really happened, and the memories start to resurface. To a lot of you who have this, who are going through repressed memory, I just want you to know that don't question your memories, in the sense of don't think that you're making it up. A lot of the time that's the feeling that we get. We might be making this up, or we might be being dramatic, or that may be the case, but you need to take this seriously from the get-go. If this is something, if you have behaviors such as self-harm or eating disorders as well, this is another one that's been, it's huge in the abuse. A lot of girls, even boys, who have been abused tend to develop eating disorders because, as I mentioned before, the relationship that you have with yourself isn't healthy anymore. So you start punishing yourself, you start depriving yourself, you start doing all sorts of weird stuff in order to cope with the emotions and the meshed up chatter that's going on in your head. So also the other thing, as parents, I cannot stress enough how much you can help your child to heal. This is simply because parents symbolize safety. Parents symbolize leadership. Not that all parents, of course, are doing that and are that, doesn't mean you can't become that. We as children, especially when you're little, you looked up to your parents, and your parents are the people that you go to for safety, for comfort, for love. Just because the person is an adult doesn't mean that you still don't have that power, that ability to help them and guide them through this journey. So I really cannot stress enough how important it is for you as a parent to understand your position in this and how much you can do to help your child. Now, of course, not every person is going to be open to help. A lot of people unfortunately shut down because of what happened to them, or they might even fight with you. Never ever give up on your child, and you got to remember that you are the parent, so you need to step up. You need to be above the issue and become a leader in this situation. If you get through that barrier, it's unbelievable the changes that you can create in your life and in your child's life. So let's just get into the 7 steps that I really recommend for you as parents, or even as a victim or as a loved one, to help your friend, partner, whoever, to recover from this abuse. Step 1, seek professional help. This is an incredibly difficult and complex topic, and it's a very sensitive topic. You need to understand the impact that this has on that person. So not only you need to seek professional help, but also the victim needs to seek professional help. This is not something that one person can handle on their own. Very few people recover from this on their own. The benefits of having professional advice for you, this is not about you getting advice for you to fix you. This is you going to get advice to have the right information and being educated about what you can and cannot do for this person, how to handle the situation, especially if they're not willing to listen to you or if they're not willing to accept your help. Having professional help will not only help, of course, them, but it will also help you handle it. Because let's just say that a scenario that the person who you know who's been abused, whether it's your child or whether it's your loved one, have an eating disorder. Now we don't only have the level of abuse, but now we also have a whole other level, which is eating disorder. So how do you handle these two things? Getting professional advice is so essential and so important to really get the right tools and help them the best way that you possibly can. It is something that you don't have to do for a very long time. It might just be temporary, but just taking those steps will make the world of difference. The other thing I want you to understand is that getting professional advice will give you the depth and understanding of what happens to somebody psychologically when they go through something like that, which will obviously increase your empathy and your ability to connect with them on a gentle level, as opposed to on a defensive level or on, you're just being dramatic level, whatever it is that you may feel, because the person may be extreme, may be over the top. That is part of some of the reactions that some of the people who have been abused go through, because they're literally crying for help without knowing that they might be crying for help. So there's many reactions that they could have to this, and many behaviors that they could have to this. So obviously getting professional advice is a no-brainer here. Also, to the older generation who think that getting a psychologist or a therapist is weak and all that sort of jargon, think again. These people study and are educated on this specific topic and can really give you the tools that you literally do not have. Number 2, you need to talk about the abuse. Now, I'm not saying you go up to them and say, hey, so let's just sit down for a cup of coffee and talk about your abuse. It's not quite like that. What I mean by this is that you need to let them know that you are always open to the conversation. You need to check up on them constantly, ask very gently, and don't ever come in very aggressively, because that's never going to work. So it's about being aware and sensitive to their needs, and understanding that by talking about it, you're giving them permission to feel safe. Safety for somebody who's been abused is so crucial. And I understand that for a lot of parents specifically, especially old school parents, this is an incredibly uncomfortable topic. In fact, to the point that it might make them feel that, they don't want to deal with it for whatever reason. You not talking to your child or not giving them permission to have that conversation with you makes them feel even more shame than what they already feel. They need to know that they didn't do anything wrong. They need to hear those words, you didn't do anything wrong. By not having that conversation, literally they're going to be thinking, oh, is it wrong of me to talk about this? There is a reason why people do go to therapy, and why therapy does work is because people talk and process and understand. And also you, as the victim's loved one, you need to understand them and where they are coming from and how they feel and what their experience is at. This will help you so much, because this will give you an insight of their world and what they're going through. You can't guess this. And you need to ask the right questions, which are, what can I do to support you in this? What do you need from me to make it better? Ask the right questions, but let them come to you. So this takes me to my number 3. They will need constant reassurance of love and support. So you want to make sure that you are using the right languaging around them. They will be mentally and emotionally beating themselves up. And it's hard for somebody who hasn't been abused to understand why that would be, right? You're a victim, that wasn't your fault. Why would you beat yourself up? Well, it's not always black and white. Some scenarios happen that, let's just say that a girl went to a party and she drank too much, and then it happened. It is your job to remind them that it is not their fault, that they are loved no matter what happened to them, that they aren't dirty, that they aren't a waste, that they are special. I mean, you can't build their self-esteem. They need to build it themselves. But what you can do is you can show them the way. You can be by their side while they do that. Number 4, this is something that everybody has to accept. Unfortunately, this is something that isn't miraculously going to go away. Miraculously, I can't even say the words. Miraculously going to go away. It's not. It is going to be a memory. It's going to be an experience that will be there forever. Doesn't mean it has to be a curse. This can actually turn out to be a huge blessing. It can bring you together closer. It can strengthen your bond, your love. But this is something that you can't just brush under the carpet and think that after 20 or 30 years that it happened is just going to miraculously go away. People who have been abused may never really recover, may even get worse over time. Avoidant personalities are the kind of people that tend to go, oh, well, forget it, it's been so long ago, as if this still affects them. It still affects them. Unless, of course, they take the correct healing steps and the right approach to helping themselves to heal and recover from that experience. Number 5. Now, this one is so important, and this is about languaging and what never to say to somebody who's been abused. This is not just coming from my own experiences. This is coming from what I have heard from other people, personally, online, through research, you name it. This is a very common thing that happens, that people say to people who have been abused. Why? I cannot understand it, but this does happen. Get over it. Now, if somebody has had, for instance, as a child, they've been abused as a child, in their 30s, they might still experience PTSD. They might still have issues in building relationships. They might have issues sexually with themselves or with other people. They might still have an eating disorder, whatever it is. People around them get sick and tired of having to deal with their issues. Because once again, back up all the list that I just made before, they are not being compassionate, they're not understanding them, and they're not asking them the right questions. So what ends up happening is they detach and they feel that this has become a burden on them, and it's something that it happened so long ago, and how could you still be going on about this? This is not for other people to say or judge when that person should or shouldn't get over it. The healing journey could take forever, could take 1 year, could take 3 years, and may never happen. So saying to somebody get over it is a horrible way to approach it, and it makes them feel even more guilty. It might create even more anger, even more violence, and it might completely detach them from you, damage your own relationship because of these words. This is a big one. I don't believe you. This is a very common thing that happens, especially to younger victims, because they're kids usually, or they're teenagers, and people of course assume that they are just being over the top and exaggerating, attention seeking, whatever you want to call it. When it comes to this and you're not sure if it's true or not, my best advice is to first believe them. It's better to believe them and then later get the facts. And then later you get more and more evidence to make sure that they are telling you the truth. Obviously, in a very gentle, soft way, not in a did this happen and did that happen? You don't want to be aggressive with your questions. I cannot stress how important this one is, because by telling somebody who is being vulnerable, who's opening their heart up to you, and trust me, it is not a comfortable topic to talk about, to come up to somebody and say, hey, this happened to me, and you saying, I don't believe you, it causes all sorts of psychological damage. And as I said, it causes trust issues, and the person may never even trust you personally ever again. Woo, okay. You participated in it, so therefore you must have wanted it. So in the case of abuse, especially when they're children. Children sometimes don't understand what is going on, and a lot of the times the predator will say to the child, let's go and play a game. This is a fun little game. So the child may play the game for some time up until it starts becoming painful or uncomfortable or whatever it is the situation. So saying to somebody that you participated in it and you must have wanted it isn't always the truth. We often get ourselves into situations, especially when you're unaware of what you are doing, especially when you're a child. No kid wants that. Okay, you're a child, you're not a sexual being. Even as an adult, you know, you might have gotten yourself in the wrong crowd, you might have been doing a lot of drugs, and you did something just because you needed the money or at the time you were high. Please think before you open your mouth. I don't know how else to say it without sounding like an asshole, but that's the truth, you know, and I can imagine a lot of you sitting there and saying, oh, come on, as if anyone's ever said that. Many people have said that. Parents to children, I've heard it firsthand, and it will increase the guilt. You are adding more guilt and damage and trauma on top of the trauma that they already have. How are you dressed? Now, of course, this is another one. We hear it in social media all the time. It's like, well, you know, she was probably asking for it, you know, all that sort of stuff. I mean, guys, a woman or a man should have freedom to dress however they want. I'm not even going to get into this one. It's pretty obvious. Why didn't you report it? Once you start going down the rabbit hole of watching documentaries, hearing first accounts on maybe YouTube, there's a ton of people who talk about their experience about this. You will notice that a lot of the time, the predators get away with it, like most of the time. And I had recently a friend who opened up about her experience, and you know, she actually got asked that question in front of everybody at a restaurant. Why didn't you report it back then? And her answer was very simple. I grew up in a very rough neighborhood, and if that person found out that I went to the police, they were going to get me before the police got to them. Not everybody has the privilege to just go and report it. Also, if you're young, for example, if you're a teenager or a child, you don't understand what you can and can't do. You don't understand what your rights are. You don't know that you have that option. And oftentimes when people go to the parents might not even do anything about it. But also, if you do report it, then you have to go through court case. Then you have to prove the fact that you have been abused. And then you have to deal with that person for a long time, because now you just accuse them of what they actually did to you, and they can easily lie and make up a story. We're going to get to number 6, which is educate yourself. Please, especially parents, educate yourself. Watch documentaries. There are a ton of documentaries on Netflix on this topic. Not just Netflix, but just YouTube or anything. I mean, the fact that you're here already says something, because it gives you an even deeper understanding of what happens to people who go through this. That will help you a lot. And it's not a nice topic to watch. Having the courage to educate yourself, to learn, to understand what people go through, and to see the pattern. You know, you will notice that there's a pattern of behaviors and of emotional trauma that happens to people that go through this, especially if you're a parent. I mean, if your child has been through this, you need to understand what's going on. Do your research, go online, go to seminars, read books that people have gone through this. And number 7, I don't know if you guys already hate me enough for being so direct or not, but it's not about you. Now, I'm not trying to say that everybody here is selfish and self-absorbed, but we naturally have a defense mechanism, especially because sometimes the abused person might attack us, might blame us for some of it, might be closed off to us. And so a lot of the times what happens with the loved ones, especially with the parents tend to look at themselves a lot more, and not always in the best way. I'll give you an example. This has happened to a few people that I know, and this oftentimes happens when the child has a very strong personality. The person, the child, the adult, whatever, tells the parent that they have been abused. What ends up happening is that the parent, as opposed to, which of course you're going to get emotional about it, but they start crying and they start blaming themselves and they start making a huge deal out of it. Guess what happens when you do that? Suddenly, the person who's been abused now has to take the attention of their own needs and have to attend to your needs. It's about them. In this moment, you need to push your emotions aside and you need to step up for them. You need to be strong and you need to understand that it's their needs that are priority right now. If you want to fix this, if you want to make this better, their needs are priority. So another thing that I wanted to quickly address is parents avoiding this topic or not wanting to talk about it. A lot of the time, this has a lot to do with them. If you yourself have been abused, what ends up happening is that you don't want to deal with your own shit. Therefore, you're not going to be dealing with your child's shit. Once again, it goes back to all the steps that I said. Getting help, professional help, which will also help you to deal with your own. You don't have to go to the therapist to talk about your stuff necessarily, but it might help you to deal with your own stuff. And the other thing is, of course, you feel that you have failed as a parent, and some of you may not be able to accept that. You haven't failed as a parent. This is your opportunity to step up. This is your opportunity to make the wrongs right. This is your opportunity now to become a leader, to become a support system for them, and use the tools that I have just given you today to empower yourself, to empower them, and to heal this, as opposed to creating more trauma and more issues. Avoiding things will only make it worse. Guys, I really hope that this was helpful, and I really hope that you, your loved ones, and your family can find peace and healing. I know you can do this, and I know it's not going to be an easy journey, but when you heal something like this, you become so powerful. And through your own power, you empower others. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, please just subscribe to it, and don't forget to like this video. And of course, if you have a friend or a loved one who's going through something like this, share this video, and hopefully it will help them, and it will help you, and it will make this world a better place. Namaste.